Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, we're going to be going over all of the patch notes. We're going to be reading them all. Now, I just want to let you know that there are a lot of skill changes in these patch notes, which I actually already talked about from the Crash the Server party. So the only time I will talk about skill changes are if they are directly different than the video that I made already. So I'll be leaving that video in the description. So make sure to check out that one if you want to see all the skill changes in the game that I believe to be are good. Now, of course, as well, I'll be talking about things that I think are important and actually affect the balance of the game. I'll be glancing over things like visual updates and stuff because I want to make this video as short as possible. So as well, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel as stuff like this takes a very long amount of time, so it's highly appreciated. With all that being said, let's get into it, shall we? Of course, added damage is turning into adaptive melee damage for melee attacks. This means if you have a weapon like a sword with 50 flat physical, it is now 50 flat adaptive melee damage, which then of course turns into the element of the weapon that you're using. This is very good for a lot of different builds, but we already know about this change. Dual wielding was buffed. It went from 15% increased damage taken to 9% increased damage. This means that a lot more builds will go dual wielding, as just taking 10% increased damage is not really that big of a deal for a lot of characters, at least in softcore. And hardcore, you're still not going to do it, but in softcore, it's going to be a very easy thing to do, and it's going to be great. We can actually talk about all these in the same section here. Increase effect for damaging ailments is gone. It's kapoots. It is now penetration with ailments. I'm not entirely sure how this is going to play out. It might be good. It might be bad. It seems like it's bad in a lot of situations, so we'll see. I can't really talk about that as I actually need to play with the changes. Resistance shreds from ailments. So, for instance, shock, fire shred, stuff like that. That's all going to 10 stacks instead of 20% stacks, and certain stacks are being buffed to make up for that. Like shock is getting double the amount of stun chance, stuff like that. So it's still going to be a really good ailment. So in theory, it'll be fine. It's just yeah, just shred in general got nerfed a bit. Duration got changed on some ailments, like they'll tick faster in a much closer time. So like your clear will feel a lot better versus like boss fights, at least in theory. We'll see about that. Poison had the 30s made it so that it only gets 30 stacks worth of poison resistance shred instead of just like a bunch. Now, of course, you get 28 base damage instead of 20. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this. It might be good, it might be bad. Who knows? Shock, like I said, limited to 10, but now it's 20% chance to be stunned, which is really cool as well. Resistance shreds limited to 10. Ignite, reduced duration, but it doesn't deal extra damage, which is fine. Bleed went from 3 seconds, but it's still going to do the same amount of damage, so it should feel better for clearing, which is interesting. Same thing with Damned, Electrify, Time Rot. Crit Vulnerability, this is a pretty big nerf. It is now limited to 10 stacks, and it only adds 2% chance to be crit per stack from 5%, meaning that you'll have 20% base instead of course, however much you were getting before. This means on like a Reign of Winter build, you're going to actually need to build at least like 100% chance to crit, or like maybe 150% chance to crit. It's not really going to be that much of a deal, as there are ways of doing that very easily, but it's definitely something you're going to have to remember to do. Area scaling is a thing now. You can get percentage area scaling on certain items like gloves and amulets. You can also get area for melee skills on two-handed maces, axes, and swords and spears, which is absolutely amazing because suffixes on two-handed weapons are pretty bad. Depending on how much increased area you get, there might be some cases where going a two-hander instead of two one-handers is going to be a lot better. There's also going to be some base types with increased area as well in the next patch. So that's going to be cool. Another change we can talk about is a lot of these skills are getting all pooled into the same like kind of like tag to traversal. So they all share cooldowns. So instead of them having to like make a bunch of like, of course, tooltips, they can be like, it's a traversal skill now. All right, it shares cooldown with all the other traversal skills. Now, cooldown changes all are being nerfed in a way, technically. Technically. So they're all getting nerfs in terms of cooldown, but cooldown recovery speed is now an affix. It is now a suffix. You can put it on your suffixes. You can roll it on boots and helmets and goes up to 20%. Now, it used to be 14%. You can also get 32% on a T7. So, yeah. Yeah, also there's a new type of ring type, Opal Ring, which grants 10% increased cooldown recovery speed. There's also some new body armor and helmet types that grant increased cooldown recovery speed. So, yeah, cooldown actually is something you can manipulate. Lethal Mirage, Blade Dancer, anybody? That's going to be fun. Yeah, that's mainly on that. Acolyte Minion AI has been buffed significantly, specifically for melee minions. They will be a lot better when it comes to killing enemies, and skeleton warriors and rogues will prioritize enemies very close to the player as well, which is really cool. And of course, wraiths will just stick on the enemy until they die. So melee minions on Acolyte should feel so much better next patch, which means you can actually play them and have fun with them. So that will be cool. So I want to note here as well, there's a lot of skill changes, but I went over a large majority of the skill changes in a prior video that'll be linked down below. You can watch that instead, as that is all the skill changes. The only time I will mention a skill change is if it is changed from what we had before. Okay, so I'm only going to talk about it if it's changed before. So you can either read through these or watch that video. All right, so something that I talked about in the skill changes video that has changed since then is Flame Reave. Flame Reave was going to be nerfed. Essentially, what they were doing was they made it so versatility only affected Surge and Mana Strike instead of course, Firebrand and Mana Strike. This means that if you do Flame Reave, boom, 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 bam, you make the big explosion with Flame Reave and stuff like that. That wasn't going to be a thing in 0.9 until everyone complained about it. So they fixed it. So ignore this node. For some reason, I don't know why it's still in the patch notes. I asked the devs about it and they said that it was an oopsie, but this is the new versatility and new Rhythm of Fire. So Rhythm of Fire now causes Flame Reave to have 4 stacks of Rhythm of Fire. If you're at 12 stacks, it consumes all stacks to create the same bonuses as before, which is really cool. So this node is not going to change the functionality of the gameplay for Rhythm of Fire itself. You're going to go bam, bam, bam with Rhythm of Fire. Cool. Now, versatility now causes Surge to gain 6 stacks of Rhythm of Fire, so use Surge twice, then you use Flame Reave for Big Boom. Fireball, you got to use it twice to 3 times, big and then Big Boom. Mana Strike, you only have to use it 3 times for Big Boom, and then Firebrand, you have to use it 4 times for the Big Boom. Now, the thing is, Firebrand is the only usable skill out of all of these for Flame Reave specifically. So we're only going to be using Firebrand anyway. So instead of only having to cast it 3 times to get the boom, now you have to cast it 4 times to get the boom, which is fine. That's a fine nerf. That's good enough. You know, I'm fine with that. Instead of 1, 2, 3, bam, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, bam, which is like whatever. They buffed Firebrand as well, so you're going to be dealing a lot more damage with this setup. There's a lot of stuff in that regard that's going to be cool. So this change, 100%, wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you, EHG. Also, so Accelerando, now it also makes it so reduce the Rhythm of Fire stacks for consumption by 1. So it means that you don't need as many of the stacks. And of course, it gives Flame Reave 2% base crit chance when it consumes stacks of Rhythm of Fire. And then, of course, you can have 3 points in it, meaning you can reduce it from 12 stacks to 9 stacks. And you can also have 6% per 6% base crit, which is really cool as it makes it actually viable as a skill when you're not using Firebrand, which you're not going to use anyways, but still really cool Flame Reave stuff. Thank God the devs listened to us, because now Flame Reave Spellblade is back in the game. We're good to go. All right, this change was not in, of course, the event patch that we had a few weeks ago, the Crash Server Party. Essentially, what it means is you can make, of course, Glacier teleport for you. I don't know why you would do that, but you can. Cool, I guess. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this, but cool, I guess. Like, I guess you can use it to get mana back because you can use the mana on crit glacier stuff and all that. I don't know how this is gonna feel, but yeah, you can teleport with glacier now. Okay. So this is something that I forgot to talk about in the skill changes apparently. Bountiful Victory gives 3 mana on kill, and it also gives 3 mana when hitting a rare or boss enemy. This is a huge buff to Mana Strike in general. Now it can give 12 mana back when hitting a boss, which is really cool, as that means that like you can like this is a huge buff to builds that we're using Mana Strike for mana, as on bosses it's going to be way easier to of course get that mana back, which is really cool. Also, as well, Static fixed a bug where Static had no baseline critical strike multiplier, meaning that you did not have 200% critical strike multiplier. You had nothing. Thanks. Cool. Didn't know that. Wonderful. Teleport got a small change. They added some cooldown recovery speed to the tree. As you know, it's because they're increasing the cooldown because of all the traversal skill stuff. It's also making it so it resets the duration of haste. So if you have a haste that's ticking down one, like 3, 2, 1, and you use teleport, it will reset it to 4 seconds, which is really cool. I like that. I don't know how I feel about that, but it's cool. I like it. So woohoo. All right, so there was a node inside Void Cleave that was not in the patch. Added a new node, Gravity's Edge, which grants 275% more max distance, but adds a 1 second cooldown duration and makes Void Cleave count as a traversal skill. This was not in the last patch, in the, of course, in the event patch for Crash Server Party. So this makes it so Void Cleave can actually be a movement skill. I'm not entirely sure how that will feel, but what I really like about it is it makes it so that you don't have to spec into Lunge and Void Cleave. If you're using Void Cleave as like a utility skill, now you can just spec Void Cleave as the, of course, Lunge. And Void Cleave is a better utility skill than, of course, Lunge is. So this is going to be interesting. I like this. Now, this is the change I do not like. So its base cooldown went from 18 seconds to 24 seconds, which is understandable. It grants 60% cooldown recovery speed from 200%. That's understandable. That was pretty OP. Now it's 300% for 400% for, of course, the mana one, and this is the life one. Now, the problem is there were a lot of there was a very large amount of Sentinel builds that were requiring the usage of reversal, if that makes sense. You kind of really needed it because of mana problems, and now those problems are gonna be even worse. Now, there's also this where 12% chance to recover 10% remaining cooldown on kill. So that node was nerfed as well instead of just 3% on kill. Although this might be better in theory. And then of course 4% chance per point. I think it goes up to I think this is like 3 points in it. So this 36% chance to gain 10%, which is like okay. And then 4% chance, 12% chance to recover 10% of the remaining cooldown on rare or boss hit. So this is more useful in a boss fight, especially if you're hitting a lot. But I don't know entirely how I feel about that. But yeah, they also buffed it for void skills. Grants you a buff that causes you to deal more void damage per time whatever. So you can have 12 of these, and this can be 4 points. So you can get 36%, 48% more damage from this for a void skill, whatever. So, okay, that's good. I like that. That's cool. Volatile reversal. So, and of course, shifting power now also grants you a buff that causes you to deal 8% more void damage to stun targets. This is useless. But this is interesting as they made volatile reversal very strong for very specific builds, which is cool. I like that. But they also made it a lot less usable in general. Now, the problem with this, like I said, is this is just going to only exacerbate the problem with Sentinel and its mana problems. So we'll see how this goes. This is definitely the nerf it needed. So that'll be interesting to try it out. All right, mages and sorcerers passive tree got a huge amount of buffs. Like it's crazy the amount of buffs they got. So first thing off, you have cooldown on Mage Flurry now. Now, of course, this is just to counteract the nerf to the cooldown, which is fine. You also get 5% more fire damage to ignited enemies for 5 points. That's kind of not good, but cool, I guess. It's interesting. This node, calculated destruction, now grants 1 intelligence per point from 20% increased spell critical strike chance. If you have 5 points in it, you also get 3% spell critical strike chance per intelligence. This means if you have like around, like, let's say 100%, 100 intelligence, right? You get 300% crit chance. That is a buff in theory to higher amounts of investment, right? So that's kind of cool. Intelligence stacking sorcerer got a lot better with this. So, but it does nerf anything that wasn't intelligence stacking. So I don't know how I feel about that. Now, wisdom now grants 3 mana and 3% increased mana regen per point. And then if you have 6 points in it, it also now grants 3% mana regen per 100 max mana. Now, this can have 10 points in it, so you get 30 max mana and 30% increased mana regen. And then if you have 6 points in it, you get 3% mana regen per 100 mana. So if you have like 500 mana, you get 15% increased mana regen. So it's cool. It'll be fine. It's interesting. It's definitely better than what it was before. So like that is cool. Arcane momentum's kind of cool. Doesn't really matter. I don't really think this is good. And of course, they changed Afterglow to work with channeled skills, just like whatever. Now, Lost Knowledge grants 1 ward per 10 max mana from 7 ward, and it now requires 15 points in the Sorcerer tree as well, so it's like lower. Now, forgive me for having to do this, but I have to go figure out where Lost Knowledge is in the Sorcerer tree, because I'm not entirely sure where it is. Let me make sure that I'm looking at the Spellblade tree like a dumbass. 1 second. Oh, here it is. Okay, so it's just the ward gain per point. If you can get 10 points in this, this is 10 ward per 10 max mana. So essentially, yeah, mana stacking for ward when you use a skill that costs 40 mana. That's cool, actually. That's actually very interesting, to be honest. You'll gain essentially like it's like 10 per max mana. So if you use a skill that costs 40 mana, you will gain 100 ward. That is very interesting. This definitely opens up some options. That's really cool. So that's another change. All right, Beastmaster, real quick. Aspect of the Viper increased poison effect has been changed to poison penetration, i.e., it's probably dead. We're not entirely sure, but it's probably dead. So, sad. I really liked Aspect of the Viper. You know, it was really cool, but oh well. All right, now we got to talk about some juicy stuff, some unique buffs. Erdron's Refuge went from 10% to 15% to 10% to 20% of current mana gained as a ward when you cast a fire spell. So if you have 800 mana, you will gain, of course, like 200 ward when you use it. That is very cool. That's a lot better. Now it grants 10 to with 750 ward when you cast Flame Ward instead of 100 to 250. So that's a lot more ward. And then now grants 10% less damage taken if you have at least 1000 ward. That is very easy to accomplish with all of the other things that are happening for Sorcerer. So very interesting. Arrow Guard got nerfed because it will have less legendary potential on it, which is sad, but it was pretty cool. Ash's mortality got nerfed again. Thank God. It was pretty OP. Bastion of Honor finally got nerfed. It went from 6 meters to 4 meters. Still, everyone's still going to use it, I guess. So, whatever. This doesn't really change much. All it's going to make you, like, your melee build is now going to be even more melee, like it was before. Interesting. Okay. It's fine. It's weird. Curse of Perseverance, like we already know about that. We already know about this. They made it so Fulgurite shards now convert 60% of shurikens and lethal mirage base damage to lightning. This means that if you have 2 of them, you don't have to run the lightning conversion nodes, which is really cool. This is much stronger for shurikens than it is for lethal mirage, but it's really cool nonetheless. Invoker's Frozen Heart is still bad. Invoker's Static Touch grants 5 to 10% chance to gain 75 ward when you hit a shocked enemy. Holy bejesus. Didn't we learn with Ashes of Mortality? This is like insanely strong. Invoker's Static Touch is actually going to be a ring that you use now. If their way of fixing set items is just buffing them to the moon, then I guess that'll work. Immolator's Ablation now scales up to 40 stacks of Ignite. It's still bad, doesn't matter, because after all the nerfs and stuff. Oshiron, of course, got buffed, as you may well know. Plague Bear gets 20% more damage against enemies affected with the Plague, which is really cool. Shattered Chains, 5% more damage per stack of Doom, which is really cool. That's really cool, I like that one. Shroud Obscurity got buffed, but it's still bad. Soulfire got buffed a little bit, grants 10% more damage to spell damage to ignited enemies. This means that at a high level of investment, if you have like a 3 to 4 LP Soulfire, you can make it work really good on a lot of different spell builds. So just slamming a bunch of course, just stats on it. And then this is interesting. This is a nerf for Ignite builds because you didn't care about this for Ignite builds. So I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that. So whatever. Throne got changed like you saw. And then one of the saddest changes I've seen in the entire patch, Wings of Argentus got kind of giga nerfed a little bit. It went from 20% less damage taken. It went from 40% less damage taken while moving to 20%. I was assuming they were going to put it 30%, but 20%, that's a lot. They did buff it so that like you get +2 to melee attacks. So when you're playing Fire Warpath, you get +2. You also get a lot more increased damage from 40 to 100 to 40 to 160. But without them changing the LP level of Wings of Argentus, if it stays at 110, which I think it currently is, or something like that, yeah, they kind of nerfed it into the ground. So Wings of Argentus is a dead item, at least for now. Unless if you're playing Fire Crit Warpath and you have like a 2 LP one laying around, but good luck with that. But yeah, there you go. All right, one last little change. The increased throwing damage affix on gear. This turn changed to added adaptive throwing damage, meaning that it means that, like, essentially, if you're playing a throwing build, this is a gigantic buff in most regards. Now, of course, the throwing damage, and throwing mana cost affix not just against throwing damage instead of just throwing physical, which is a huge buff as well, which is really cool as well. Like, that's fun. It's really cool. So we're that's really cool as well. We really like that. So overall, throwing builds actually got a lot better this patch. So that's gonna be fun. All right, that's gonna be it for the patch notes. Sorry this video is so short, but if you want to know about all the skill changes that I think that are actually important, a link down below will be in the description where I talk about all the skill changes in game, as well as that. Yeah, if you want to like just read the patch notes yourself, the link for this page will be down in the description as well. With all that being said, this has been Dread, and I have video stuff to go do. Bye.